going on, everybody? I'm doing a weird video today. This is just something, nothing fancy, just something kind of short, but something that I really want to say that's on my mind. It's a beautiful fall evening out here. I'm about to cut a buttload of grass. But before I do that, I want to say this. I saw a video recently by the Redeemed Zoomer. And it was about how he announced that he was going to stop doing Protestant apologetics. One of the reasons that he mentioned that he wants to stop doing this is because he feels that why should he spend so much time critiquing, even though he always did this in a very charitable way, I think, why should he spend so much time critiquing Orthodoxy and Catholicism over Protestantism when he realizes that Protestantism has its own faults? And should he spend more time and effort critiquing his own tradition instead of other Christian traditions? Point of this video is, what would it be like if Catholics were as honest as Redeemed Zoomer? I've been Catholic for 17 years. And if you've ever watched my podcast, I will defend the Catholic faith against attacks or misconceptions or lies from, mainly Protestant traditions. I usually don't ever just attack Protestantism for the sake of attacking Protestantism or Orthodoxy, really. I'd never really rip on Orthodoxy. But if I was going to be really honest, though, and take the same approach as Redeemed Zoomer, what would an honest critique from a Catholic about Catholicism be? What happens if we, on the online community, spent this effort critiquing our own tradition? Would we actually do more good than just by ripping on other traditions? Now, ask yourself this question. Even myself, how many Protestants out there have watched my podcast and have said, oh my gosh, I gotta convert? And they left their Protestant church, they signed up for RCIA, and they became Catholic, and they just grew in their faith. I have probably 3,300 subscribers. I'd probably say, I don't know, maybe 0 of them, maybe 1 or 2, but probably, I'm guessing 0 of them actually left Protestantism and converted to Catholicism into a deeper relationship with Christ because of my podcast. Most of the time, what we like to hear is Catholics like to hear somebody defend the Catholic faith in a way that they might not know how to defend it, with words that they might not know how to describe or how to explain. But how much control do we have over Protestant churches, over Orthodox churches? It's really nothing. Really, I mean, it's nothing. I have a Protestant church at the bottom of my driveway. And to be honest with you, I'm in communication with them. I've shared some thoughts with a lot of these people. I think a lot of them have actually reacted and responded to some of the thoughts that I've had with them. But it was not because of an online dialogue. It was because I invited them over to my house. I'll be honest with you. There's a Protestant pastor who, he's a YouTuber, and his name's Pastor AJ. And he just came out with a series on, Reformed theology and the Church Fathers. And I write and respond a lot on his comments. What people actually don't know is probably once a week, I invite him over to my house. I make him homemade pizza. I make him homemade Italian food. We have a couple beers. We talk theology. He learns from me. I learn from him. even my podcast was really encouraged by him. My podcast, the podcast, look, here comes Ruby, she sees me. My podcast from, this Catholic podcast was actually encouraged by a Protestant pastor who was just like, listen, man, just preach about Jesus. I don't care if you're Catholic. I don't care if you're Orthodox. I don't care what type of Protestant you are. Just preach about Jesus and preach the gospel. With this all said, our influence on people from other Christian traditions is not going to come usually from YouTube. It's going to come from a personal dialogue. Now, most of my audience is probably Catholic. So, what can I do to help us be able to influence our own faith, our own community? Because that's the actual influence we're going to have control of. You, if as a Catholic, you're going to have control and more of a say-so in Catholicism and in the Catholic faith than you are going to have about how you control the Orthodox or the Protestant faith. Now, the whole point of this video, what are some of the critiques that we need to be better at? One thing I'll tell you is this. You know what a big difference between Protestant theology when it comes to the atonement versus Catholic theology? You hear me mention this all the time. Where you get the Reformed theology and penal substitution and how this compares, even as Dr. Scott Hahn said, like how does this compare to, St. Thomas Aquinas and vicarious satisfaction? But the real big difference is, if you go to a Reformed church and your church actually teaches penal substitution as its theory and theology of the atonement, you're going to hear it like 40 million times from the pulpit. I don't think I've ever heard the words vicarious satisfaction ever mentioned or preached from the pulpit. And if you're Catholic watching this, you go, oh, vicarious satisfaction. What is that again? What is that exactly? That's my point. That's the issue. We are critiquing so many other faiths. We don't know our own views of justification. That's what my heart is. I want from this channel for you to learn the Catholic understanding of justification because I believe it will bring you peace. I believe it will bring you joy. But as Catholics, we have to admit, it's not like we're just preaching this simple salvation message that's clearly stated from the pulpit during Mass. A lot of times we don't. And if it wasn't for YouTube and some Catholic YouTubers, I don't know if I would ever have learned theology and Catholic soteriology the way that I have. Now, another critique is this. You say, hey, you're thinking about becoming Catholic. Oh, you should join the Catholic Church. Where did you come from? Oh, a Protestant church, and now you want to become Catholic. Great. You love the Bible? Great. Do you like Bible studies? Oh, that might be a problem. Because you could look probably in your diocese, and you're going to be very hard-pressed to find an adult Catholic Bible study that's not at 9 o'clock on weekday mornings. If you're retired, then yeah, you're going to find a way to go to a Catholic Bible study. If you're not, you're going to have a very hard time finding an adult Catholic Bible study. What do we do? Now, I could complain about it, or you could just start one. And sometimes, what my whole point of all this is think about how much we would change the world by going on YouTube and by just critiquing Protestants and Luther sucks, Calvin's a heretic. Think of that compared to if you actually started a home Bible study for Catholics. I open my home up every Wednesday. 20 some people come. It's not huge, but we go through the Bible. We went through Romans 5 last week. I'm going to teach on Romans 6 this week. I love you guys on YouTube. I love you guys, but there's nothing better than when you actually are talking to somebody in the face and you're spreading the gospel. You're teaching them the Catholic understanding of the gospel. It's just great. All of the commenting on YouTube will never help the Catholic Church in the same way that you would help the Catholic Church if you started your own Bible study. Try to get permission from your church. And listen. Sometimes they find out you're a conservative Catholic. Sometimes it's going to be hard. There's sloppy stuff. And if we're trying to convert people to Catholicism, making it look like once you become Catholic, everybody knows the faith. And the Catholic Church, we teach the faith, and we don't waver at all. And every priest is very orthodox, very conservative, and they preach very precisely the gospel from the pulpit. That's just not the case. So we are needed as Catholic lay people. We are needed because there are so many issues with our church. No matter what diocese you live in, your diocese is probably short on priests, short on Bible studies. My son, I have a 17-year-old son. I watch at the bottom, you could see all the way, let me see if you could see all the way in the background. I don't know if you could see the little white spot there. That's the Protestant Church. There's stuff there. There is stuff there every other day. They have young adult groups. They have women's Bible studies, men's Bible studies. They have, I'll pull out of my driveway and I'll see the pastor will be in that church meeting with men, praying. My son is 17. My church doesn't have a youth group. There's no young adults, and people say, "Well, you should start one." I get it, but I teach CCD, I teach a Bible study, I try to do a podcast, and I try to do plumbing. So my whole point is, we as Catholics need to step up to the plate. We need to be honest that there's stuff lacking in our own tradition. And if we were honest as Catholics, the way that Redeemed Zoomer is honest, we would admit that, man, we could critique Protestantism and Orthodoxy so much. Your biggest mission field in teaching Catholicism, instead of just worrying about converting your Baptist neighbor or your Methodist neighbor to Catholicism, which we should, because it is the fullness of truth. Well, even if there's only 3 people preaching it, it is the fullness of truth. But what we need to really do, a big mission field that we have, is actually converting Catholics to Catholicism, teaching Catholics the true meaning of the faith, the true morality. Listen, the average Catholic doesn't even go to church. In America, I think like 75% or to 80% of Catholics don't even go to Mass. Out of that 20% that goes, what percentage do you think goes to confession once a year? What percentage do you think has read the Catechism at all? What percentage do you think even knows who St. John Chrysostom or St. Augustine or Ignatius of Antioch? What percentage of these people do you think they even know who they are? What percentage have read or could name 4 letters that St. Paul has written? We're like Jonah, and Nineveh is often in our own parish. And sometimes that's where we need to go. Sometimes that's where we need to be sent. So like I said, I didn't want this to be a long video, but just a really honest thing is, if you have a Baptist friend, an Orthodox friend, a Lutheran friend, a Catholic friend, who like loves God, like who truly loves Christ, who has this desire to follow them, like you should be thankful. We should all be thankful for all of our brothers and sisters in Christ who actually love God. Because there's a lot of people in your church, in your parish, who might not actually love God. And that's our job as Catholics, is to understand we need to help fix the defects in our own tradition. And if your priority is only to fix the defects in other traditions other than your tradition, you will never be as useful as you would in serving your own. You hear people say all the time, you don't have to go to a third world country to feed the poor. You have homeless people in your town. And it's kind of like, that's true with Catholicism. It's not that I have to walk to the Baptist or the non-denominational church at the end of my driveway and just start, preaching the church fathers. I will discuss this with these people. But I also understand that I have people who come to my Bible study, 90% of them are Catholic, and they tell me, like, Nick, I went to Catholic school. I've been Catholic for 70 years. I've been Catholic for 80 years. Nobody ever taught me this. If we do not offer adult Catholic Bible studies, adult catechesis, open to everybody, it's our fault when people leave. It's our fault. So with that, I just want to say goodbye. Ruby, you got anything to say? Shoo. All right, guys. Hope you guys like this. I hope it makes you think. Get involved. Start a Bible study. Quit waiting for somebody else to volunteer. All right, guys. Peace.